Hello and welcome to another episode of Casting Views, the podcast that takes a topic each week and, as the name suggests, cast views. This week, as it's the end of the month, you're going to get another Who's Coming to Dinner episode. And this week, I'm joined by two people. So I am joined, and I'm really excited about this because I think it's the first time appearance for one of you. But I've got the hosts or co-hosts and 2/3 of the Game Club pod. I've got 100% of the two blokes from Blighty, brothers Joey and Tim from both those podcasts. So how are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. How about yourself?
I'm very good. All excited to have you on because I've had Joey on a couple of times. I've kept saying I've got to get the two of you on.
Every time I'm on, Tim, he says we always book the wrong ones, and then we have to do the episode anyway.
He keeps meaning Slade.
The funny thing is, before I joined, I was messaging Joey and I was calling you two the rock and roll stars of the podcasting world. And obviously the video's not going out, but listener, if you can see, these two are impeccably dressed, have put me to shame. And I'm the host of this podcast and dinner party. So yeah, fully embarrassed.
There's nothing like wearing a suit and tie over a t-shirt.
I'm trying to remember what my shirt says. It's one of these horrifically translated ones from Wish.
Let's see, Tim.
It's something about time is a rhythm and make it march and whatever. But it's a very gaudy red and black number.
You look a bit like Harley Quinn.
But not as cool.
But twice as sexy.
Damn right. Margot Robbie, eat your heart out.
Right, I need you two to remember I don't have a bleep machine on this podcast, which I know gets overworked on you. No, it's fine. I'm joking. I was joking. But yeah,
well, Dan, you came on to Two Blokes, and when I heard you swear,
oh yes, I
nearly fell out my chair.
I was excited about that. Yeah.
I'm always really taken off guard when people who I don't expect to swear start swearing.
That was my tactics. I won Joke of the Week specifically because of that, didn't I?
You did, yeah. It was shock value. It was like, Dan, did you ever used to watch Flight of the Conchords?
No, we were talking about that on
yes.
WhatsApp, but no, I haven't yet.
There's a scene where, I can't remember the name, it's Reese something, the comedian, who plays Murray Hewitt, and he's quite mild-mannered, and he goes, "You make me so angry I could swear," and they both go, "You wouldn't swear, Murray," and then he swears at them, and it's amazing, because it's like a whole season's build-up to this very small explosion of anger.
Yeah, and it's like a little one sentence. No, it's not even like a yelling or like a crying thing. It's just like a little passing comment.
It's very good.
Oh dear. Well, depending on how this goes, I might be swearing by the end of it, but we'll see. We'll see.
We guarantee.
So I want to talk about yourselves and the podcast first. So the first thing I want to ask you is, so how did you two meet?
Sorry, it goes back to 1992, I think.
Yeah. No, that's just me being childish. I messaged Joey. I said, the first question I want to ask is, I'll have to say brothers in the introduction, but then also ask how you two met.
So when we were younger, Tim genuinely thought that he came from a yogurt pot in Tesco. When they used to have little plastic toys that came in them, and Tim really thought he came from them. So all three in Tesco in Hall Green, Birmingham is where we met in 1992.
Well, now you've made me yearn for the days where you used to get toys and stuff on cereals as well, cereal boxes.
Can't do that because people swallow them.
Have you seen that article from The Onion that's a fun toy banned because of 3 stupid dead kids?
Wow.
It's serious, though. It's serious. I mean, I don't remember anyone when I was a lad just because they wanted that dinosaur that was in the pack. And that was the other thing. It was the only reason you bought that particular cereal was because you wanted the toy. And then it was at the bottom, so you'd empty it. Then, of course, you didn't want the cereal after that. So.
Do you remember when they had the little Jar Jar Binks that came out of, I think it was Walker's Crisps, and they had the really long, sticky tongue, and you used to whip it at people?
They had it on the front of copies of the Dina, of the Dandy and the Beano.
Really?
Yeah.
Jar Jar Binks, that famous dandy character.
Yeah. Looks a bit like Plug from the school comic.
Bash Street Kids, well done.
Bash Street Kids, thank you.
Bash, not back. Very different set of kids.
All right.
Okay, but serious question. Well, serious question, as serious as they're going to get. So, right, your two podcasts. So let's talk briefly first about Game Club Pod, but we won't talk too much because Slade's also part of that, and he's not on this tonight, so he's had his turn. So how did that come together with the three of you? And that is something I'm not sure I remember if I've heard that story.
Tim, do you want to go ahead?
I think Joey got a podcast microphone for Christmas one year.
My 30th birthday, my wife got me a microphone because I wanted to do a podcast.
Yeah, you wanted to call it Dad Pod.
That was later.
From there, you were just like, "Do you want to do a podcast?" And then I was like, "Yeah, sure. I think I know someone." And then I introduced Joey to Slade, and 3 or 4 years later, here we are.
So Slade was your acquaintance, right?
Yeah. I've known Slade for about 6 years at this point. No, when did I move back to England?
Still class him as an acquaintance, by the way.
Yeah. He's a colleague at best. No, I absolutely love the guy. We argue, but what friends don't.
Yeah.
So I've known Slades probably since about 2016, so coming on 10 years now.
Yeah, they met Tim. That was very, very sharp-ended. Where did you meet Slade?
I met Slade through another friend of the pod. If I don't know if he's going to be listening to this, friend of the pod, Pete. The way that worked was when I was working in Texas, I worked for a pretty large production company called Rooster Teeth for a while. And when I was working a convention, when I moved back to England, I got introduced by the person who I was working the convention with to a friend of the pod, Pete, who was working at another convention stall. We then went out to dinner and he introduced me to this Discord channel full of people, and Slade happened to be in one of them. Joe's just cracked out a wine glass.
I've just seen that. That's incredible. That's incredible.
Not doing anything by halves.
A martini glass.
Not doing anything by halves when we go to a dinner party with Dan.
It's the biggest glass of wine I think I've seen. Look at that.
And the real secret is it's Pepsi Max because I don't drink wine.
There you go.
Okay.
But then I was added to this Discord full of people, and Slade was in there, and that was about it.
Do you know what I mean? The fact you're working in Texas and living over there, I think I've said to Joe before, the little nuggets of information that you two sort of let out about your past lives on your pod, I think is fascinating. I want to get you back just to find out about the history of Tim and Joey. That's what I want to do.
Just telling weird stories that have happened.
Two blokes from Blighty. The thing is, I think I find it so easy to remember the ridiculous things that happened with us growing up, and they're so easy to talk about because every time I see my dad, our dad, I should say. Yeah. Every time I see our grandma, it's been a long time coming. Every time
suddenly I'm on the Jeremy Kyle show.
I've got a story about the Jeremy Kyle show. I was on the Jeremy Kyle show.
Oh, I've seen the picture. I've seen the picture.
But not my proudest moment. Not my least proud either.
You were in the audience, right? You weren't a guest, okay?
Well, no, I was in the audience. But every time we see Dad or an older relative, you just end up talking about, I remember when we did this and remember when we did that. And I see them quite a lot. So we recall these old stories quite a lot. And then I remember something ridiculous off the back of it. So a good example is when Tim and I were talking the other day about wrestling for some reason. And we went through a phase like every teenager did where you loved WWE, WWF, whatever it was at the time. And we used to play fight whenever anyone, like an adult, left the room. We'd just beat each other up.
Yeah.
And there was a point where we were doing that at Dad's and we were upstairs doing it. And as a part of our play fight, I threw Tim down the stairs and he got up and was laughing and ran up the stairs back. And it's little things like that that stick in my mind because immediately after that, I pushed him off the bed as part of it and he cried until Dad came and got us and absolutely rollicked us.
Yeah.
So
I was going to say, I thought you were like the main character from Unbreakable then.
He is like for big injuries, but for the small ones, they really hurt.
I'm like a reverse Achilles. Everything hurts except my heel.
Okay, so basically then, Tim lived in America, Joey got a microphone. That's the genesis of the pod, yeah?
Well, I'm sure of it, yeah.
I wanted to do a podcast for ages. I was ready to do one with some people I worked with called How Do We Make a Podcast? And the idea was every single week you go in and you start with, I've got an idea, let's do a podcast on. And it's just like anything you can think of. That never came to fruition, but that kind of planted the idea. I really want to do a podcast. And I knew that Tim streamed and Slade streamed, so they had all the equipment already. And obviously, we're using Zencastr now. Sorry, Dan, I hope you don't mind me calling them out. Zencastr was free back then and made it really easy to do as a hobby. And I found that I was sort of missing feeling a bit creative. So I just said to Tim, like, we both like video games. Let's talk a little bit and make a video game style book club. Now, the one thing I really don't like about our podcast is the name. I don't know why. I hate the name Video Game Club. It used to be called
Game Club Pod.
Oh my god, it's called Game Club Pod now. It used to be called Video Game Club.
I was going to say, have I got this horrifically wrong, and have I got to go back and re-record?
This is where we gaslight the audience.
Yeah. It's our show, and I can't remember the bloody name of it because I don't like it. But we spent ages coming up in Discord with loads of different names. Now, Two Blokes from Blighty, whilst it's not our main show, I absolutely love the name.
Yeah.
Do you remember how we came up with that, Tim?
We were going on ChatGPT and just typed like essentially engineer prompting ChatGPT into wrangling us a name.
And it gave us Two Blokes from Blighty, and it feels so much cleaner and nicer than Game Club Pod. And then Slade has Between Two Pods, which I think is a great name, and the Anime Corner, which I think is a great name. We just can't rebrand. We've gotten this far in, and everything is at Game Club Pod. So who knows?
It's a bit of a sunk cost fallacy in marketing.
Yeah.
So when I had Slade on, I was saying what I like about your pod is that you don't pick games necessarily that you're all going to agree on. And I'm not saying I'm here for the beef, but what I'm saying is, it'd be really easy to say, right, what game do we all love? Right, let's do that. You've all had some, I won't say falling out, but there's been some episodes where it's been quite heated.
We'll say falling out.
Yeah, there's been arguments. We've bickered a lot in the Discord. We've bickered a lot on recording. But
like, if you went to a book club and everyone just went, oh, this is great, this is good, it's a really boring listen.
Yeah.
Like, I think we say that the ones where we argue aren't always my favourite. I think there are times like Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is one that sticks really memorably for me because Tim and Slade got to the point where I was like, okay, maybe I need to calm this down a little bit. But Duke Nukem Forever is one of my favourite episodes, and it's one of the worst games we've all ever played because we mutually hated it and we just like beat on a game that we didn't enjoy. I feel like for content, and the ones that live on, like Resident Evil 4 is a prime example of something that lives on. Like, Tim and I absolutely loved it. Slade hated it. But because of that back and forth, I think you get both sides of a community. Because people do hate Resident Evil 4, and I understand that. But for the content, you've got to act really annoyed about it. And that meme of 3 in our podcast as a score out of 10 stemmed from the fact that Slade gave Resident Evil 4 a 3 out of 10, and I turned inexplicably like a chimney sweep from the 70s when I was shouting out the score after him. So, yeah, I don't think there's any point in having a podcast where you just talk about games that you enjoy. It just would be really stale, I think. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, it's a podcast where everyone goes, game good would be over in about 5 minutes. Like, yeah, you could talk about the individual aspects of a game, but it's far more interesting to have a point, counterpoint, counterpoint discussion.
And that's the thing, and that's what I really like about it. Now, there are a few things that stand out, and I've listened to all your back catalogue now. I have gone through it from episode 1. And it is the fact that, and I can say it now because he's not on it, Slade, if he doesn't like a game, feels like he doesn't want to even try to like it or give it a go. Is that a fair assessment?
Absolutely fair assessment.
And I think that's what riles you two up probably more, isn't it?
He'll deny it, but we all know. But jokes aside, it can feel like that sometimes. But I get there's times that you don't particularly want to do something. Like, I imagine not like every film critic doesn't want to watch every movie under the sun. In the same way that I'm not saying that we're critics as such, but there are games that we definitely can't be bothered to play. Like, my brain immediately goes to Persona 5, and I like Persona 5. I don't want to play 120 hours of it for the pod, and that's the game that actually enforced the reason for us to start putting in a 10-hour rule on games.
Oh, okay.
Because 120 hours on a single episode is loot. Because we were pushing that episode back for months and months and months because we just weren't ready.
We started it in February, I remember, because I had to borrow a friend's PlayStation 4 that I never gave back. And then we didn't release it, I think, until October.
Yeah, it was just being delayed and delayed and delayed. And we were talking about, do we want to put this episode into 2 or 3 parts? And I was super against the idea because I was like, that's going to be a nightmare for like continuity and contingency between recordings. Plus, it'd be a massive break in our mold for a single game, albeit a game that, in the grand scheme of things, I like. Despite the score.
You described it as like milk that's gone off.
Well, the Royal is like milk that's gone off. The original game, pretty good for the most part. I don't know if we've really answered the question, but essentially there's a lot of steps and changes in process that have come about from previous games. Like I said, the 10-hour rule, the giving something an actual honest go, I think is a pretty big rule. Like, not just being like, 5 minutes in and we're out, unless it's something like I'm on observation duty or McPixel or, where the game is inexplicably short.
Well, I think, Dan, going back to the original point of the differences between us and Slade, I think naturally Tim and I grew up playing video games together. Like we got our first console, which was a Nintendo 64. We played it to death. We played the PlayStation 2 to death, and then we got the Xbox and we played that to death, but we played together. So I think we have a fairly standard between us way of playing games, whereas with Slade, we don't have that context because he used to play with his cousins or he used to watch his cousins play. And Slade won't mind me saying that he is a pretty stubborn guy in the way that I think we all are, and that's how the tension can happen. But there's an ongoing joke on our podcast that Slade only gives good scores to the games he picks. And that's why the average scores of the games that Tim and I pick is lower. But I think we're playing video games at the end of the day. It's not like it's anything that actually matters. So we'll make that joke and we'll wind Slade up with it. But, we only do it for fun. So.
And it is emphasis on the fact that it is a joke, because he does sometimes give scores to games that he hasn't picked. Like, he loved when we played Minecraft Dungeons, for example, and that wasn't one of his. I think he enjoyed Doom. Like, not enjoyed, didn't hate would be better.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exactly that. It's a joke.
And to be fair, though, I like that, because if you get 3 people and me, I don't like every genre of game. I don't like every single game within a genre. So it's nice to hear that the attitude of someone who might only look surface deep initially at a specific game. Because like you said, if Slade then likes a game that you've picked, then that's almost like a recommendation. That's going on the back of the box, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
yeah, and I think it used to speak to the way that we would choose games. So I think what we used to do is go, I love this game, so let's talk about it on the podcast. And we stopped doing that really quickly because I think there were certain games, and I'm trying to think of some off the top of my head. So Resident Evil 4 is probably a good example. Tim and I absolutely loved that game. And although the 3 thing is a bit of a meme for us at this point, at the time, I was like, I have no idea how you can't love this game. So what we do now is we put things in a running order, like every podcast does, and we plan our episodes really far ahead. But the games aren't just there because we loved playing them. For example, we played Duke Nukem Forever, and I would put that in there because it would be really funny to make us all play a terrible video game. And Slade put in Unpacking, thinking that Tim and I would quite enjoy something a bit more relaxing, and we both absolutely hated it and ripped it to shreds. So I think our approach to how we choose games changed massively. The other thing that really changed is in our first 5, maybe 6 episodes, we didn't censor anything.
No.
It just
we
used to
censoring
be
things for the algorithm.
We did, yeah, because on the platform that we upload our podcast on, there's a specific button that says, does this episode contain explicit content? And if you say no, you're more likely to get pushed into you also might like this podcast.
Yeah.
So I said, let's start censoring it and it'll be funny. It adds so much work to the podcast because Tim talks like a sailor.
I do.
It's just Tim. Slade and I are very well behaved.
Yeah.
But then for Two Blokes from Blighty and for Between Two Pods, Anime Corner, even Game Changers that Tim's done some episodes of, it needs to be much more conversational. So if you throw in a censorship beep, it ruins the conversation. It ruins the flow. And for those podcasts, we wanted them to feel like you are part, as the listener, you are part of a conversation. So we just stopped doing it, and it didn't really make a difference.
Just going back to the point about how we pick games as well, I'm sure Joey's noticed this in the running order, and I'm sure he has a bit of a plan and a process for how he picks games. But for me, I try and find something a bit weird and different. And like, when's this episode going out? Is it the end of April?
End of May.
No, this is actually going to go out in May.
Tim, you can say we did Hypnospace Outlaw.
Brilliant, thank you. We did Hypnospace Outlaw, which is a game that I found. I don't know exactly how I found it, but I was kind of really drawn in by the concept of playing as a moderator on like this bizarro world MySpace, and I was like, that sounds like a really cool experience. I'm not going to give away the pod's thoughts on the game, but we'll look at things like Hearthstone because it's a tabletop game, or Fallout 3 because it's a pretty major MMO, or Bioshock 1 because it's a first-person shooter that was pretty big on the Xbox 360. And I think trying to build variety and avoid us railroading into like, we're playing Medal of Honor, the 5th one in a row. Shy of us doing the Zelda trilogy.
Apart from when we did 3 Zeldas in a row.
Yeah. That was a bit of a... Actually, that was a really cool moment in the pod, thinking about it, because Slade and I pulled together the £20 and sent Joey a copy of Breath of the Wild for the Wii U in the post.
Yeah, I remember that being said. Now, you mentioned Hearthstone, so at time recording, that's your current episode. And that as well was another one where I think Slade just didn't get on with it, right? And he let it be known from the start.
Correct. So you can tell when Slade doesn't enjoy something, because he'll normally make a noise a bit like...
Yeah. I mean, I do want to sort of talk about Two Blokes from Blighty, but there was another. Yeah, so the observations I wanted to raise as well was unpacking where I could hear Slade's heart breaking into pieces when you two didn't like it. Yeah. I was going to mention Hearthstone, and also I've been talking to him recently because I was playing Undertale, and I know that's one of his favourite games, isn't it? And it's a great game. It is a really good game. When I was playing it, I think I just heard an episode where he was slating, is it Vampire Survivors, where he was saying all you do is walk right on the screen. I was thinking, well, in Undertale, I'm just walking right a lot. And I wanted to message him. I thought, no, because I like the friendship I've got with him.
Oh, you should message him. He'd appreciate it.
Yeah. No, Undertale was our second game on the show. I've got our scores sheet up here on my...
No, wasn't Piku Niku second?
Not according to the sheet I've got.
Oh, okay. I thought Undertale was third, but it was very, very early on.
It was like second or third. And as an average, because for those who haven't listened to our show, we each give a score out of 10, then we average it out for what the Game Club score is. And we end up averaging this to 9.2, so we really, really liked it.
Although I do think in the early days we were very generous with our scores.
Very generous. I want to get, and I have no idea if my girlfriend would let me do this in our office or not, but do you remember the old Top Gear scoreboard times?
But I think you should do a cool wall instead.
Yeah, well, isn't that what they called it, the cool wall?
No, the cool wall was where they put the cars from Sub-Zero to really hot, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But the times was their lap times, and it was just a vertical.
I might do that. I might get like a whiteboard, just pop it here and just bam.
This is how Two Blokes from Blighty happens.
I've got my idea board here.
Yeah.
But this is how Two Blokes from Blighty happens. I suggest something and Tim goes, I don't know if my girlfriend would like that. And I go, you should do it anyway. And he goes, okay, I'm going to do it.
I want to talk about Two Blokes from Blighty because, again, I know I say it to you, and I actually mean it's one of the best podcasts. I love Two Blokes from Blighty. It really is what's going on in your head said out loud, isn't it? And kind of, so why did you do that one? And honestly, where does the running orders for that come from?
So I think the reason Two Blokes works from really well, at least from my perspective, obviously can't speak for Joey on this, but for me, it's very much turn your brain off and whatever comes out, comes out.
Yeah. I mean, the idea came from someone I'm going to speak about a little bit later, Dan. It came from a podcast. So I should say, although we have all these ridiculous things going on in all of our podcasts, when it comes to me, for certain, not one of my ideas is original. I stole the idea of Game Club Pod from a podcast called Pixel Vision, which I really liked. I've told them. They said, cool, love it. Two Blokes from Blighty came from a podcast I listened to called The Luke and Pete Show, which is a spin-off of the Football Ramble, and it's literally what we do. We fill in a running order as we go throughout the week, and then we talk about the ones that we can fit in there. So I don't mind telling you, Dan, because this will go out after the next Two Blokes from Blighty. The things that we have in our running order that I've added, and I apologise for the swears here because I'm reading them verbatim from our running order. Who the is Joe? Joey's series of unfortunate events, bird shit, vomit, and squash dogs. I bloody love carp fishing, warrior, and hardest geezer. That's all we've got in our running order, and we try and squeeze an hour out of that every single week. And sometimes we do it, and sometimes we don't. But it's just, I think Tim and I are very good at talking to each other. And
well, that's it. And
a lot of the time we could go for much longer than an hour, but an hour I go, I do have to edit this at some point, so let's just wrap it up there.
I think part of the fun of it as well is I like to try and bring some articles to Two Blokes from Blighty, and it's mostly the weird stuff. You know, the weird or interesting news. That's why we've got the wow, that's crazy jingle. So, like, we had the one with the rat with the enormous penis. That was
yes, yeah.
If you haven't seen that article, by the way, absolutely check it out. Or like the woman who thought that the hair bobble was a hedgehog and took it to the vet. Like, just weird little niche stories like that I really like bringing to the table.
It was funny. I was listening to that episode last week on my walk at lunchtime, and I messaged Joey because that story, God, for the magic of time travel and editing, is going to be 2 weeks before this episode, I think. But I'm doing an episode on doppelgangers and mistaken identities, and that is going to be on my list.
Perfect.
It's all very circular, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think a lot of it also is listening to you two when I think, Tim, when you do send an article to Joey or the other way around, and just the reaction the other person gets, because it's like you always can't believe it. Even though you're doing this week in, week out, or every couple of weeks, you're still amazed by what each other finds and sends each other.
I always say that Tim is part internet.
Yeah.
Because he just seems to have, every time I see him, whether it's in person or on camera, Tim is just like, have you seen this video where this happens? And I'm like, no, I haven't seen this video. And then I go, oh, Tim, I did this today. And he goes, oh, have you seen this video? It's exactly the same as what you just said. And Tim is part internet because he can pull something, either a good conversation topic or something relevant to what you're saying from the internet at a moment's notice.
So by my desk, I have an oxygen tank and I've branded it memes, and I just breathe it in every week.
And Tim, you love a jingle, don't you? So
yeah. I'll be like I've said to Joe before. I think we sometimes have too many jingles. So I brought the idea forward for this current season of Two Blokes from Blighty for rotating the jingles, but that doesn't seem to have happened.
Well, it kind of does, kind of doesn't, because we used to have so many sections that we don't even do anymore. So the jingles started off as Tim, a long time ago, bought, was it £30 worth of cryptocurrency?
Yes. Yeah.
And I started off doing a little song, and I just, if you ever think about buying money online, don't fucking do it. It's a waste of time. And that evolved, and every single week I was like, I'm going to add a verse to it. And people were writing in and sending us verses to do. And then I got AI involved, and I was like, write me a short verse for this. And eventually it was like 2.5 minutes before Tim went, well, the cryptocurrency is the same price as last week. So we killed that off. But I thought it was really funny. So when I'm editing or doing whatever, it's like 1 a.m. and my brain's not quite working, things pop in, and I just think it's really funny. Like I sent to Dan, and I think it's in last week's episode, that I'm Just Ken song from the Barbie movie, and all I did was replace the word Ken with Tim, but I was crying with laughter. And
I mean, we called the episode 3 a.m. humor because it is just like your brain stopped working at some point, and any sort of like information it receives is immediately funny.
But my point there is, so last series we break the episodes up into 10 blocks, so that's a series is 10 episodes. We released the next series immediately the week after as if it never ended, but we thought it was funny to have a 10-episode series, and then we say at the end of it, what's going to change for next series, Tim? And Tim will go, absolutely nothing. But last series we did like hypotheticals, And the hypothetical jingle was literally 2.5 minutes. And we did the one that I won't name the jingle, which was the travel agent. If you want to find out what the travel agent jingle was, jump over to Two Blokes. Let's keep it some air of mystery, but it's disgusting. And we don't do that anymore. There's a few things that we don't do that just means certain jingles haven't made it back into the running order. And that's fine. And they might make themselves back in later. But I do think we've cut down on the jingles. Series 4 was very jingle heavy.
It was. And a lot of segments have been replaced. Like I feel like Gaetano's Cheesesteaks has taken over the travel agent, for example. And each season, and I'm using season in massive air quotes here, we replace the celebrity for the celebrity sighting. I don't remember when we added the joke jingle in.
No, I don't remember either. But the celebrity is a really good example because in series 1, I don't remember how we got to it, but Tim just went, "What do you think Johnny Vegas is doing right now?" So we just asked every episode, "What is Johnny Vegas doing right now?" And then it moved to Tom Hanks. And then it was Keanu Reeves. And then it was, "Who is Will Smith slapping right now?" And now we've got, "Who's Jeff Goldblum charming right now?"
Yeah. And I normally try and make the charming bit into a segue for an article that I've brought to the table.
That's all they are. Our regular sections are just segues into the things we actually want to talk about, Dan.
For me, the two best ones, for me anyway, was Will Smith one and the original, I think it's the original Wednesday one.
It's Wednesday,
yeah. So Joey alluded to earlier the fact that everything is borrowed when it comes to podcasting and creative stuff. I think it's Scroobius Pip in one of his songs that said nothing's original. I stole the flow from the creator and yada yada yada. I happen to be listening to a podcast called Cox and Crendor in the Morning. It's a really good morning show podcast they do Monday to Friday, and they do it for the last 5 to 6 years now. They happen to be talking about a particular day of the week that week, and it was just the most ridiculous daily, ridiculous set of holidays that were only locals and small town America would celebrate. But they just found it really funny that all these weird niche holidays are happening on the same day. I was like, well, I've got to bring this to Joey and show him. And then that evolved into the weekly, how are we celebrating this Wednesday?
And the Wednesday My Dude jingle came purely from that guy on Vine who is wearing goggles and says it's Wednesday My Dude and then screams. Yeah. And if you search Wednesday My Dude remix in YouTube, every single one of the remix jingles that I've taken is stolen literally from that YouTube page.
Yeah.
Whether it's the 13-second one that we currently have or the 2-minute one that we ended last series with.
I think we should probably actually get on with the episode now.
It's going to be a long episode.
No, I could talk to you all night about it. Talking about jingles stuff, I'm going to play your ad actually for Two Blokes from Blighty. But before we do that, do either of you want to just plug your two programs, your two shows?
I don't remember how this jingle goes. It's been that long since I've heard it. Not jingle, this advert.
I remember this advert. Don't listen to our show. Listen to Casting Views instead. It's much better.
It's much more comprehensive.
Whereas I'm going to say, yeah, make sure, and I'll say it again at the end, but make sure you're listening to Game Club Pod, but especially Two Blokes from Blighty with the two people you're hearing now.
Hi, I'm a bloke.
And I'm another bloke.
And we are from Blighty. My name is Joey. I'm joined by my co-host Tim.
Hi.
Where every single Wednesday we come at you through the Game Club Pod podcast feed with our show, Two Blokes from Blighty. I tried to think about the kind of topics that we talk about on Two Blokes from Blighty. Tim, what's your favourite topic that we've ever spoken about across our 3 seasons?
The fiasco of me shaving my head.
Mine is the fiasco of you shitting on a toilet seat. If those sound like things you want to hear about, join us every Wednesday by searching Game Club Pod in your podcast provider.
Just makes my life sound a little bit tragic, really, doesn't it?
Would you listen to that show, Tim?
I would.
I don't think I would.
No.
Right, we've had the formal introductions, so let's get on with the main reason for having you on. So you are each hosting a dinner party. I understand you two haven't collaborated, so I'm going to feel like that awkward, like that episode of Friends where Rachel's parents are both having parties at either end, and I'm going to nip in between each one of your parties. I'm guest number 1, but you're going to give me 3 courses, so a starter, a main, a dessert. And then for each course, you're also going to introduce, well, I call them celebrity or people of note, living or no longer with us. And I am going to start with Tim, as this is your first appearance here. I want you to lead.
Cool. So you want my first course first?
Yeah, so if you give me your course and your celeb, then we'll go to Joey for his starter and celeb, and we'll alternate like that.
For my starter, I'm going to play it safe and go with a leek and potato soup.
Classic, nice. Yeah.
Best flavour soup, hands down. And I'm going to go with the director of the Guilty Gear series, Daisuke Ishiwatari, because that is a game series that I absolutely adore. It's the game, the latest one specifically, Strive, is the first game that I started seeing tournament results in. I now compete in like European majors, and this guy is just like an absolute workhorse of a developer. And I get that Japanese work ethic is famously quite like hard and like very firm work ethic rather. But this guy is like, he's been the artist, he's been voice acting, he's been programming, he's been directing, he's been doing the music, both live and in studio for the series from like day one. And it's just the amount of talent this guy has is pretty astounding to me.
Perfect guest for you, because you are very much the fighting game enthusiast and also expert, aren't you? You do rather well at them, don't you?
To a degree, I'm going to go with mixed bag. Like I've taken a few local tournaments, and the first time I ever went to a European major for Guilty Gear Strive, I came 49th out of 180. Now, the following year, I didn't do as well. I came 96th out of 250, I think. I'm going back again this year, but I'm also competing in Tekken as well as Guilty Gear, so I'm broadening horizons a bit.
So the creator of the Guilty Gear, and firstly, yeah, I think 96 out of 250 is still bloody good. I like who said, I didn't do as well, but yeah, still in the top 100.
Well, my goal this year is to beat 49th. That's I don't care. I don't care about finishing first.
Yeah.
I just want to do better.
Yes. Yeah,
that's it.
Okay. So the Guilty Gear. So then it's not a series I've played, but obviously very, very aware of it. How old is that now? That's quite.
I mean, Guilty Gear: The Missing Link came out on the PlayStation 1. If you bear with me, I will quickly find out. Guilty Gear Missing Link. That came out 1998.
Wow.
That came out. And it's been the same guy directing and producing it, Daisuke Ishiwatari. Also, fun bit of trivia, when Bill Clinton was doing his famous video games cause violence speech, he referenced a advert that said "kill your friends guilt-free" and showed a magazine with the advert in it. That was Guilty Gear.
So is this another series where there is a lot of lore and story behind it?
Don't get him started.
How long have you got? No, if you want to hear my Pepe Sylvia-esque conspiracy rant for Guilty Gear's lore, I would highly encourage you to go and listen to Talking Smack's episode on it, where I gave a full-on PowerPoint breaking down the lore of the Guilty Gear series.
And I have to say, that was another observation actually I did have on the show, is I love your love for fighting games. And when Slade's trying to wind you up by, I don't know, calling
Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
That's it, fighting game. And it's like, you're just, nope, it's not.
I'm not taking the bait anymore. I'm good.
He got wound up the first time we said it.
No, yeah, but like now I'm much more wizened to bait.
And leek potato soup, yeah, I'm not going to argue with that. It's a classic, like I said, classic starter, classic soup, good combo.
Yeah, that'd be my way forward.
Nice soup starter. So okay, so and so you've done that. So Joey, what are we having with you?
Can I preface my dinner party and say that it's in late autumn? Because I just looked at my menu and boy howdy, this is a lot of comforting warm food.
A lot of pumpkin.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to look like a right mug now. Tim said that. Dan, come over for your second soup of the day. This is slow cooker pumpkin soup. It's nice, it's creamy, it's filling, and boy howdy, does it make a good starter.
Sorry, I've got to interrupt you there, because Tim stopped you when you started drinking he's drinking from Ye Olde Tankard, it looks like.
So when I used to go to Austin every year for a while after I lived there, there's this place called Pico Pete's. What you do is you pay $10 for a tankard, that you get to keep, but then you get $1 drinks to the max for the tankard every single time you want to refill it, or you can pay $5 to get refills all day. Okay. So I've come back with about 4 tankards.
I'm worried what you two are going to pull out during the course of this. Take that how you will. Right, sorry. Joey, back with you. So did you say slow cooked
pumpkin soup?
Okay.
Now,
okay.
I really hope you like soup, Dan, and I really hope you're hungry, because 2 dinner parties in one day is well, it's good going. But one of the people that you'll be having slow cooker pumpkin soup with is the lead singer of the band Shikari. Now, I have made no qualms in hiding my love for this band. I have multiple Shikari tattoos. I've been lucky enough to meet them a few times. But Rao Reynolds is, I think he is a really inspirational character, as well as a fantastic lyricist and an incredible performer. He is not afraid to say what he believes in and stands up for what he believes in. So, for example, he performed at the pro-Gaza rallies in London recently. He used to go on stage wearing a shirt saying, "Do not sell our NHS." He's quite popular for leading, let's say, some anti-conservative party chants at his own concerts. But I just think he's very open and honest about his feelings. And I know that sometimes comes with being a musician, but their albums, you can see the evolution of his maturity throughout their catalogue. So their first one starts off with a lot of fictional stories where I don't think they have the life experience that they have now. So there's songs like Labyrinth, and Mothership is a great example. The whole song is about running away from aliens who are going to kill us all. And then the second album, Juggernauts, is the big song, and Juggernauts is all about when the Middle East was being bombed by Western countries in search for oil, but masqueraded as other things. I'm not going to get too political in here, Dan. And then they have their third album starts about, it's a poem about, the whole poem goes, there was a house in a field on the side of a cliff, and the waves crashing below were just said to be a myth. So they ignored the warnings from the ships in the docks, and now the house on the cliff is the wreckage on the rocks. And it's all about how society is in a really precarious position, and we are really just ignoring everything that's going on, and it's just going to fall down and break. But their fourth album is where you really look into Rao Reynolds. He had a bit of a breakdown and panic attacks and a lot of troubles with his mental health. And the song Airfield, it used to make me cry, like unconsolably, because he talks about confidence and using your downfalls and your mental health to pick you back up again. And he finishes the song with, "When the wind's against you, remember this insight. That's the optimal condition for birds to take flight." And I just think that the things he says stick with me like no other musician, to the point that I've got them inked on my body forever. I've got "We are the dust on the stained glass windows, trying to comprehend the cathedral" written on me, because we are something small in a much bigger universe. And I've got lyrics from the song Satellites, which is all about someone who is gay and trying to come out to the people that they love, but they live in a community that doesn't accept that. And it's all about how he wants to be with the person that he loves, but he can't, so he's always going past them like a satellite. And I just think he's an absolutely wonderful human being who articulates things in a really, really great way.
You said before about your love for the band. And yeah, so much so you have got a number of tattoos, haven't you?
I do. My whole of my left arm is basically for Shikari, and then I have a rogue one on my leg from Counting Crows.
Yeah, and they are, or they were anyway, a local band, fairly local to me, actually.
Yeah, St Albans based. They actually sponsor St Albans football team.
I do. Yeah.
I have a St Albans football kit because Shikari is the sponsor of it.
Yes, it's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes. Because I remember I worked with a guy, And I can't remember which one of these it was, but either loved them as well or actually knew them. Maybe I can't remember if he knew one or went to school. Anyway, but yeah, I'm going to be honest. They're not a band that I'm overly au fait with listening wise, but those who love them, love them.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cult, really, isn't it, Dan?
Well, thanks for that. And Soup, which I find funny that you both started with Soup, which is interesting. But no, good choices, good choices. Both food and music. Food and music, food and celeb. So, Tim, what's coming up for main?
Main course is I'm of the opinion that everyone can cook at least 2 dishes really well. I think everyone has a bit of a specialty dish. For me, the main thing that I can cook pretty bloody well is risotto.
Okay.
I absolutely love it. I think it's great. It's really versatile. My normal go-to is just like, it sounds really run-of-the-mill, but I'll use like, I'll fry off some chicken first in like a garlic-infused oil. I'll saute onions with garlic and with garlic in it as well. I'll mix in like particular white wine when you're actually cooking off the risotto.
It's so run-of-the-mill, Dan.
You haven't had my risotto.
It's just sautéing onions and cooking off with white wine.
I love risotto. We had that tonight for dinner, actually.
As did I.
I mean, me and my wife, not me and Tim.
I'm his wife.
but Tim, if this was a competition, which it's not, but if it was, it is. So far, you're winning. I'm just saying that.
Stuff. And for my guest, I was thinking about this. This is the one guest I was really struggling with, and it will loop into my third guest as to why I was really struggling with it. But I've decided that I'm going to go with Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden.
Okay.
In my head, I thought David Dickinson is who you meant there.
I nearly said David. Now, I like Iron Maiden a lot. They're not my favourite band on the planet, but I really like them. But the reason I went with Bruce specifically is because he is an expert in so many fields. The amount of conversations that he could have with you would be fascinating. So he's the frontman of one of the most successful bands of all time. He's a professor in spontaneous human combustion. He's a pilot. He brews and curates ales and lagers and ciders, and he's traveled around the world since like the 70s and 80s and has been doing it ever since. And I just think he would have a lot of stories to tell.
That's a really interesting one as well, because I think the people you invite can fall in between either people you just really want to meet, or like I said, people that are gonna entertain you. And yeah, I had a guest choose, I think, Ozzy Osbourne, and you think the amount of stories that guy's got in him as well, right? And
well, that's it. I mean, my first 2 guests have obviously fallen explicitly into those 2 categories, and my third guest, I'm hoping, will fall somewhere in between the 2.
Dan, as a side note, I have met Ozzy Osbourne, and he's an absolutely lovely guy.
Oh, really? Yeah.
He's so nice. Despite some of the stories and what you see on the show, the Osbournes, he's just so genuine and kind and lovely. And Sharon's really nice too.
And that's the thing, but him, like, I guess Bruce, you're going to make me want to say David, Bruce Dickinson. It's not just that they're, obviously they're famous and reached the heights of their fields, but it's a period of time which they've done it in as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the 80s and 90s. I mean, were they 70s? No, they probably...
they were probably been doing their formative years in like the late 70s.
Yeah. And those were the decades, right? The 70s and 80s specifically were probably the decades you wanted to be in that industry, right?
Absolutely. And then, but it'd be really interesting to see or to hear him talk about, like, obviously his experience as a touring musician throughout the last, 40, near 50 years, but also how, like, his perception of metal has changed over the last, like, his observations on it, but also to, I guess, as an extent of that, or as an extension of that, how his writing has changed over the last 40 or 50 years. I think that'd just be a really interesting, almost time capsule, as it were, to look at.
And also, like you said, just to get to know the person as well, because he's a pilot, which I didn't know. Joey, like you're saying about Ozzy Osbourne, the persona you get on TV to what he would be like in real life, as it was. And it's just to get to see what that person is, outside of the I want, when I say front, I don't mean, that they're putting on a fake persona, but I mean their stage persona.
Yeah. The other thing, if you didn't know he was a pilot, that's also a great fact for it. He flies the band round when they're going on tour.
Oh, brilliant.
And the plane has got their mascot, Eddie, on the back of it, and it's called Ed Force One.
That's a winner, right?
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
But like I say, he's a professor in like human combustion.
Yeah.
He curates ales and ciders and lagers and brews them under the brand The Trooper, which is another bit of Iron Maiden branding. I think he's just a really interesting dude.
There'd definitely be stories. Yeah, some that you probably wouldn't be able to wear, right? That's fine.
Maybe not at a dinner party, but in the drinks afterwards.
For your guests only.
Absolutely.
Joey, can you top the risotto?
What's the point? Because I haven't got risotto and I don't have Bruce Dickinson.
Well, let's see what you're going to do. Let's see.
Or David Dickinson. So, what you'll learn about me in this dinner party is, Dan, is I really enjoy cooking, but I am terrible at presenting it. So I have chosen 3 courses that can look like a dog's dinner, but people think that it's fine because of the food that it is. And I've gone with a sweet potato and chickpea curry for my main. Like I said, it's autumn. We're enjoying the cooler evenings, and you need something to warm the cockles of your heart.
Very earthy food you've gone
That
for
does sound
so far, isn't it?
bloody beautiful.
Well, the reason I've chosen it actually, and you'll see with my dessert, is Rao Reynolds is actually a vegan, and I want to cater for my guests. So actually, my entire menu is vegan.
I feel like the ultimate come dine with me host.
Well, if I was on Come Dine With Me, I'd order the takeaway and get it through the window like someone did.
And they won.
Yeah.
And they won. But so for this sweet potato and chickpea curry, you have red onions and chilies, and you chop them in together, and it's got ginger in and spinach, obviously sweet potato, chickpeas, coconut milk and tinned tomatoes, and you just let it all cook and simmer and soak in the flavour of everything into those sweet potatoes, and it's absolutely beautiful. But it's very filling, and it's very, like you said, very earthy, very comforting.
Going to be tired after this meal.
Well, it's certainly not a risotto, is it?
And you're running back and forth between 2 houses in different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Sorry, hold on. I just need to take a call. Disappears for 2 hours. And so I mentioned their podcast a little bit earlier. My second guest is, and I've really toed and froed between Luke Moore and Pete Donaldson from the Luke and Pete show. But it has to be Pete Donaldson, because Luke Moore is a very articulate, very well-cultured man, and he always has references from literature throughout the years. He listens to loads of really tasteful podcasts, goes to see arty movies, and tries to bring it to that. Whereas Pete makes jingles about when England win at the Euros, here's how to flip a Volkswagen without hurting your back so you don't add a burden to the NHS. And it's that kind of thing that I think I try and model my humour and jingles on for Two Blokes from Blighty and Game Club Pod. I've never heard another man like Pete before, and he just seems, and I've met him as well, he's also a very nice guy, but he's just mental. And I think if you invite him into a dinner party, you have no idea what's showing up and no idea what's going to happen, because he is one of a kind. The only downside to him is he is a Newcastle United fan, but he's from Hartlepool, so I'll let him off.
Sorry, what was the name of the podcast?
Luke and Pete Show. Yeah, or the Football Ramble if you want the football side of it.
I tend to just go for the Luke and Pete show. I'm not a football fan, but it is a very, very funny.
Tim appeared on it.
I did. I wrote a letter in once describing a horrific airport story I had where I was held up in immigration for 8 hours, and I was on there I was mentioned on there for an episode. But the Luke and Pete show is a very, very fun thing. They have a section once a week on their twice a week show where people just send in batteries. If it's a battery brand they've never heard of before, it goes onto a spreadsheet. That's it. That's the whole section.
It's a lot like middle-aged dad humour, really, for a lot of it, and I think I'm kind of there for it.
Yeah, I'm loving this spreadsheet of batteries.
Some of the batteries that they come up with are amazing. They're always out of like really cheap hair dryers that are bought in Japan in an airport when someone had left everything they own on a flight, and they're always like superpower wow battery. It's
love
good.
how
I've
things
thoroughly
like that
recommend it.
start. I love how random things like that start. Like, what's the genesis of that?
I have no idea how it started, but it's I'm all for it.
Yeah, just to go back to Pete Donaldson, he's absolutely a wild card when it comes to the podcast. And like Joey said, you don't know what you're going to get because he's the kind of guy who's had such like an eclectic life in his experiences. He could pull from any of that and just rack up to your dinner party.
His recent thing that they keep talking about is he used to be a DJ on Radio X, and he got fired from that because he invited in a guy who it turned out his job was to be the Hobgoblin, you know, the ale brand, the Hobgoblin Hobgoblin, and just let him ramble about ale for 10 minutes live on air. So now they're
talking about his divorce.
Yeah, now they've got this running joke that every time they're going to get sponsored by someone new, the Hobgoblin's going to read out the sponsor. Yeah, it's very good. They tell a story about when Luke was trying to talk to Pete about something really serious about the show, and he looked over and he was trying to patent a hat that you could wear that also carried your food for you. Like, he doesn't do things for shock value that he brings to the podcast. He's just genuinely a bit of a weird guy.
Just very in the moment at all times.
Yeah, so I think he would be my second guess for that reason.
I think the guest list at the moment is, the word is eclectic, probably, isn't it? But that's good. That's good. Okay, so we're going to move on to dessert. Now, the question I've got for both of you, actually, are you dessert people? Because I will say that I'm much more, give me a starter and a main, or two starters and a main, or a starter and two mains. But I'm happy to leave dessert, basically.
I have a sweet tooth, but when I'm going out to dinner, I'm not typically a dessert kind of guy. I'm much more of a main and side as opposed to starter and main.
Yeah, give me a slab of chocolate cake at home. Absolutely, I'm happy. But yeah. Okay, so having said all that, so what are you dishing up then?
I'm going with my all-time favourite dessert for no other reason than I like it, which is profiteroles.
Oh, classy.
Absolutely love profiteroles. Just they're little pastry balls of chocolatey, creamy deliciousness.
Can't say more than that, really.
Well, that's it. It's is it short puff pastry or shoe puff pastry they have in
shoe, isn't it? I think.
Shoe puff pastry.
Yeah.
With if they're served warm but the inside's still cold, it's like, oh, chef kiss. Incredible stuff.
When we were growing up, we used to live about 10-minute walk from a Tesco Express, and this Tesco wasn't too far from the train station that you'd have to get into Birmingham, and I would often meet Tim at the Tesco Express because it was about halfway, or if we were going to work together, because we used to work together at the University of Birmingham, we would go in and they would have these little packs and it would just be 3 profiteroles and Tim would just buy them and eat them in the street on the way to the train station or the way home.
It's the perfect dessert. It's walking food.
Well, they're perfectly self-contained desserts, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's if you wanted to go, just grab a handful of it. It's like grapes, but nicer.
It's like grapes, but really unhealthy. But
yeah. And for my guest, the reason that I picked Bruce Dickinson, because obviously Bruce Dickinson is my second guest. He's a very well-read man. He's very much into all sorts of fields and of study and life experience and what have you. So I thought for my third guest, I'd pick Diane Morgan, the comedian, who's typically known for playing Philomena Kunk on TV. Now, the reason I've picked that is because she, on the show Philomena Kunk, is incredible at improvising questions to people, like experts in their field, and completely derailing a conversation. So, for those who listen to Two Blokes from Blighty or Game Club Pod, or even The Fanatic when I was doing that, will know that one of my favourite types of humour is just chaotic, off-brand, weird niche references. Like, if it's a niche reference or if it completely, like, T-bones a conversation, I'm into it. And this is exactly what she does. So the joke that immediately comes to mind is on the Philomena Kunk on Christmas special she did a couple of years ago, she was talking to this religious historian, and one of the first questions she asked was, how did the pagans learn to walk upright? Just something brilliant like that. Or like, she was talking to this World War II historian, I think it was. And one of her first questions was, "What was the Soviet Onion?" And for the whole of the conversation, she was just adamant it was the Soviet Onion.
Not someone I'm over familiar with, not that show anyway, but kind of the way you were talking, speaking about it, and some of the stuff you were saying in that episode just sounds, someone who'd be right up my street in terms of my kind of humour.
Yeah.
I think she got her first break in Charlie Brooker's show.
She did,
didn't she?
Okay.
So I guess the thing that I'd really enjoy about that side of the conversation is you've obviously got someone who means a lot to me in terms of gaming and my competitive nature. You've got someone who's really well read and well versed in a lot of life aspects. And then you've got someone who is just going to set fire to the whole conversation. And it just perfectly encapsulates everything I want out of a dinner conversation.
Well, one thing I ask is, so do you think they'll all get along?
I don't think Daisuke Ishiwatari is going to have a flipping clue what's going to happen.
Well self-censored.
Thank you.
Well done.
Mainly because he doesn't speak a blind word of English and normally travels with a translator.
But he's there for the food, right?
Well, that's it. He's there for the risotto and profiteroles that, incidentally, you can just stuff into the profiteroles if you're feeling a bit savoury.
Joey, over to you.
If I lose to risotto stuffed profiteroles, Dan, I'm going to be really upset. So my dessert is something a little bit lighter because we had a very heavy pumpkin soup followed by an extremely heavy sweet potato curry. And it's a simple vegan lemon cheesecake.
Ooh.
And you can have a little bit of it. You can have the rest of the cake if you want it. But like you, I know looking at me, you maybe wouldn't believe it, but I can't be bothered with dessert. I can't be bothered with starters, to be honest, most of the time. So, yeah, it's just there. It's just a vegan cheesecake. Lemon one. Because
I like it. I
seem
like
to
it.
like it.
Who doesn't love a cheesecake?
Well, we'll find out when he chooses your dinner party over mine. But this is where I'm going to sway it. This is my ace in the hole. This is my royal flush. The final guest at my dinner party is someone who we all know and love. Someone who would tell you to forget about it. It's Josh Scar. I would bring him over from the States. If you listen to this show and you don't know who Josh Scar is, go and listen to Talking Smack. It's wonderful. And the man who presents it, well, he's just a gem of a human being who I get along with very well. And I think he would talk podcasts with Pete Donaldson, and he would talk life with Ralph Reynolds, and then we'd just hug for the rest of it. So, yeah, I think they'd all get on. I think Josh is an exceptional human being. And if you don't choose mine now, Dan, you don't want to hang out with Josh. So,
well, wow. He owes
No
me money
pressure.
as well for the plug for him as well. What I'm going to say is, food-wise, I think I'll choose Tim's shades it for me. Guess-wise, I'm going to have to say you've thrown in that blackmail card right there at the end.
I have, yeah.
But no. I mean, Josh is great, and we have a lot of chats about Mass Effect with our messages. But yeah, of course, he was your Talking Lasso co-host.
So I was drinking out of a wine glass and then a pint glass, but the pint glass is an AFC Richmond one, which is the football team in Ted Lasso. And it was just a show that Josh and I absolutely loved. And then season 3 came out and he went, "We both make podcasts. Do you want to make a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, let's make a podcast." And 2 days after that conversation, we watched the first episode and we recorded the first episode of Talking Lasso. And it was really lovely to get to sit and have a proper chat with him for an hour and a half every week, and just watch a really wholesome, lovely show. And I feel like actually Ted Lasso, when I watch it back now, makes me think of Josh, and it's really wholesome and lovely, and I think the man is too. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I really like Josh, and I've known him now for a couple of years. Talking Lasso is also, because I'm coming to the end of it now, it'll be done now, the Black Mirror retrospective, and I was thinking, it's not something I normally do, that kind of show, but then I was thinking back to that, your Talking Lasso show, and I was thinking, yeah, why not?
Well, I think that Talking Smack might be the reason that we speak to each other, because Josh, whenever we used to tweet something, we used to use hashtag PodNation or whatever it was, and it was a Twitter account that just retweeted everything independent podcasts, and Josh followed us off the back of that, and we followed him and listened to each other's show and got speaking. And you were part of is it the Brain Trust?
Yeah.
But then you joined our Discord, and I was at the time making a video game, and I was looking for voice actors to be in it, and I made one of the characters say, "Have you listened to the latest episode of Casting Views? I really liked X, Y, and Z." I can't remember exactly what it was, and that was what started off us having a really nice friendship. So I think I can thank Josh for getting to know you as well, Dan.
Yeah, well, there you go. There you go. Thank you, Josh. I know it is one of the cliche things to say, but that's what I have really enjoyed about part of this podcast is the amount of people I've got to know, and some really, really decent people.
And us.
And you two, yeah.
The dregs.
Yeah, but okay, all right, look, like I said, you're throwing that in, so yeah, definitely your guests are going to win. But yeah, I do have to pick Tim's menu.
That's okay. I won't be offended. We'll take our vegan.
It's not, and it's not even the vegan list, because I will often,
all right.
Sometimes when I go out, I'll often choose like the vegetarian options. But I'm going to be honest, the main reason being I'm not a huge fan of sweet potato.
Ah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I also think Tim's menu is probably much more balanced than mine. Mine is very heavy. Everyone will be at the dessert table sleeping.
I don't know, risotto can be heavy.
It can be dense.
And profiteroles depends how much it's got. You haven't seen how many I would put in my plate.
You have no idea.
And I would have said it on the previous one of these, but if I had to pick my dessert, I say I'm not a dessert person, but stick a slab of Arctic roll in front of me and I'm yours.
How do you feel about Viennetta ice cream?
Viennetta, we discussed that. Yeah, if I'm feeling sort of quite, if I'm feeling rich that month. Yeah, because do you remember it used to be seen as like, yeah, that was the decadent dessert.
It was like £3.75 in the local corner shop at a slab.
Yeah, but it was marketed. It's like Ferrero Rocher, wasn't it? It was marketed as the dessert.
One.
Yeah.
But if ever you're feeling overwhelmed, Dan, here's my life advice to you. Just YouTube, how is Viennetta ice cream made? And it's the most relaxing thing you'll ever see. It's amazing.
Okay. I have got some real quick questions I want to throw at you. That's all right?
Yeah, of course.
And also, sorry, Joey, disappointed you didn't invite Emmy Martinez over for your one.
He's too much of a troublemaker. So him and Pete Donaldson would burn my house down.
Let's get these questions done. What video game would you make us all play?
Tim, do you want to go first?
No, because I'm thinking.
Okay. Mario Kart's Mario Party is an easy winner. I'm not the biggest fan of Nintendo, but I think they do the in-person co-op or couch games really well. So Mario Party.
I think it's probably a bit of a recency bias, and Joey will probably agree with me here. We've been playing a lot of Ultimate Chicken Horse lately. Are you familiar with it, Dan? Or
no, not at all.
So, Ultimate Chicken Horse is a platformer game where the main objective is to screw over your friends. So there's essentially you go into a series of different levels, be like a farm or a dam, or you're in space or whatever, and everyone starts off at the same point, and everyone's got to get to the same point. But every single turn, you and all your friends can add a random obstacle and place the obstacle anywhere you want. You get points for killing your friends. You get points for finishing first. You get points for, I don't know, grabbing a coin that someone's placed down if they want it to be a particular threat. And it's just a lot of very approachable fun.
Yeah.
Sounds good fun, yeah.
Yeah.
I choose that one. I go to that party.
Mario Kart's classic as well. So,
yeah.
Okay.
Which one are we talking, Joey?
I don't know. I've not played them in a long time. I don't have real life friends, just on the internet.
Moving swiftly on. This was a really random question, but if you could have a dinner in a game world of your choice, which would it be? And is there food from a video game you would want in real life?
There's definitely food from video games that I'd want in real life. There's two. I was looking at this question. I'm really trying to think about which ones I would pick. I thought about maybe Final Fantasy 15 because the food in that looks very, very good. But if I had to pin it down to one game, I would probably say Monster Hunter World or Rise.
That's my answer.
You can have that answer too. You can have that answer.
No, it's got to. I'll think of something different.
The food in Monster Hunter looks incredible. And Capcom have actually come up with a Monster Hunter World cookbook, but it's very expensive.
I love how there are cookbooks for games. Like there was a Halo one as well, wasn't there?
But have you ever seen the food from Monster Hunter World, Dan?
No, I've not.
I played Monster Hunter, and I'm not a massive fan of the gameplay.
I love Monster Hunter personally.
The start of each mission, you get buffs from the food that you cook. So every single time, it's like these cat assistant things cooking it up, and the animation is fun, and the food looks amazing, Dan.
Oh, really? Yeah. Oh,
much better than anything Tim and I.
Oh yeah,
have a look. Not 15, but Final Fantasy 14. Wasn't there like a 5-minute speech on? Was it Cup Noodles?
That was 15.
Oh, was it? Oh, was it 15?
That was 15.
Okay, so it is that game.
Cup Noodles got a massive sponsor in for it for some reason, and you can walk around in a cup noodle costume.
That's right. Yes, I did. Yeah, that's one I have played. Then I've misremembered, but yeah, remember there was about a 5-minute dialogue, wasn't there?
Really. What's that delicious food? It's cup noodles. It's like, oh, cool.
Right, Joey. Hopefully, we've given you a bit of time to think about a new answer for that. So, do you have one?
Yeah, I do. So, Monster Hunter is my answer, but if I was to go for a second answer, it would be Breath of the Wild.
Yeah,
just because you can have so many different combinations of the food in there, so you'd never get bored.
Okay. Another one I haven't played, but I'll check that out just for the food. Now, this one you've probably actually done with Slade, but Joey, we can talk about Josh because he's coming over for yours. For both of you, what classically British meal or food items would you ensure friends from overseas would have to try?
I only have one answer here because I think British food is famously terrible, and that's fish and chips. Classic. Fish and chips. Everything from the chippy is good and battered and wonderful, and it's got to have curry sauce, which isn't very British. And actually, now I say curry sauce out loud, tikka masala was invented in Birmingham.
Yes. I thought it was Edinburgh.
Chicken tikka masala invented in Birmingham. So I've changed my mind immediately and retract my all British food is terrible. Chicken tikka masala, a proper, very, very long to make and a lot of love poured into it. Chicken tikka masala is, banging.
Very good.
I'm going to go with a meal that always seems to make Americans recoil whenever they hear about it.
Beans on toast.
Beans on toast with cheese and Worcestershire sauce. Oh, yes, please.
It always makes me laugh how they recoil at that. And
they can't wrap their head around it. And it's delicious and it's really filling. It's kind of good for you with the beans.
Cheap as well.
Yeah, it's cheap and you could a tin of beans, some grated cheese, and some toasted bread will quite happily serve 2 people.
Yeah, I mean the amount of times where say I've come home late or something and we've not got anything, and it's like, you know what, beans on toast with some cheese. I mean, maybe it's 40 years of growing up with it, but it's like I can't see why. It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's such a staple in like British growing up life. It's a horrible sentence, but like for people growing up in England, they will have definitely had beans on toast at some point, and they will understand why it's incredible. I implore anyone who hasn't tried it, get some baked beans, get some cheddar, get some toast, whack it all together.
It's great because you go, what do you want for dinner time? I don't know, beans on toast.
And it takes 5 minutes.
It's just so easy.
Yes. It takes 5 minutes. Done.
Yeah,
that's a whole dinner.
Beans are a great addition to a lot of meals, actually. You can have beans
rolls,
on the side. Maybe not. I mean, what I do like, you said Worcestershire sauce. I do like adding my thing now for about a year or so has been the Nando's peri-peri sauce you can buy from the supermarkets.
Yeah.
Onto beans on toast?
Not on the beans on toast, but if we have beans. So like what I like doing is sometimes when you have mash, have beans with it, because then you just mix that all together.
Yeah.
I have this image of you with a big plate of mash and beans, just being really happy, Dan.
I do love the comfort foods. I love me pies. I love me potato.
But not the sweet variety.
No, not the sweet. Although I'm forced to eat it quite regularly because it's good for you, apparently. But
sweet potato fries, though. Ooh.
Yeah, okay, yeah. If you're going to do it like that, but Joey didn't say sweet potato fries, so
no, I curried them.
And a couple of the classic questions. If you had to put on a film for us after all of that, it says, if you wanted to get to know me, what film would you be putting on?
That's difficult because, as again, if you listen to Two Blokes from Blighty, you'll know I like quite a lot of ranges of cinema. I like really I love incredible movies like Parasite and Whiplash. I love comedies like Airplane is my favorite comedy of all time. I love terrible movies. Like I've got an entire collection of just awful, awful movies. If I had to put one down, it would probably be Neil Breen's Fateful Findings. If you've ever seen that, Joey's rolling his eyes. Have you seen it?
Yeah. No,
Have you seen it?
Dan, don't do it.
No, I've not seen it. No.
Tim and Slade love this guy, and he's an absolute moron.
Oh no, he's brilliant. He's so genuine about his movies. Dan, I'll if I can, I'll find a way to get you a copy of it because it is pretty difficult to get in the UK. But this guy Neil Breen, he was a real estate agent in Las Vegas, and some point around his 50s, he was just like, I just want to make movies. And he just stopped doing real estate work and put all of his money into movies. And they're all terrible, but in a really lovable way. And he's, from what I've seen from the behind the scenes of his films, the actors that work with him are just like, he's a really genuine guy who cares about his actors and just wants to make movies. And I've got a lot of respect for that.
I just feel as this episode's gone on that Joey's view of me has got less and less because that actually sounds like the sort of film I think I might be interested in.
Dan, it's not. If Tim wanted to say a bad movie that he enjoyed, the other day he told me he watched a film called Kill Keith, which is about like a Kill Bill style film about Keith Chegwin.
Yeah.
So he could have said that.
It was actually a pretty fun watch.
Keith Chegwin, classic from the 80s and 90s
Cheggers.
again. Yeah.
Cheggers. If I was to do something that would tell them all about me, if you search my name in IMDb, I have a single entry, and it was a film I worked on at uni, and it's called Special Sauce. It's a short film. It's a terrible B-movie style comedy about a student in Leeds who didn't pay for his food, so the restaurant owner cut him up and put him in the food, and it was some of the most fun I've ever had making that film. So
we get access to that easily.
I can't even find it. It's one of the most incredible things I've ever done, and I cannot find a copy.
I suppose this is something that a lot of people kind of in the podcast space that we regularly network with wouldn't know about. Is that Joey and I actually have very similar-ish degrees. In that Joey did digital film production, I think.
I did television and film production.
Yeah. But you were specialising in the more camera and director photography side of things. And I did digital film production, specialising in audio engineering and sound design. So we've both worked on some really, really weird little projects.
Tim, my favourite one of yours is your first ever paid gig.
Yeah, my first ever paid gig. I worked as a boom operator on a softcore comedy porn, and I absolutely refuse to put it on my show reel because it might be the worst thing I've ever worked on.
No, I think you both alluded to this, and I remember saying, I think Joe, I remember saying to you quite some time ago that it was kind of inspiring me because I was having conversations, not to work on a softcore, but I was
in need of a fluffer.
Yeah, but I was hearing some of the little snippets of your past lives, like I was saying earlier, and talking to some people at work, and I wanted to almost do a series like Real People, Real Stories or things like that, because there's some amazing stories within you that you kind of sort of reference, and it's like, yeah, it's kind of, that's what I love about talking to people and this type of podcast. I'm really enjoying this because you're actually getting to hear stories from people.
Yeah.
Well, the most surprising thing that you'll find about Tim and I is that we are actually educated in some form.
Yeah.
That doesn't come across in anything that we do.
No, I mean, I'm regularly talking about, having my brain turned off and shitting on closed toilet seats, but I do have a degree.
Well, I'm going to stick your IMDb link in the show notes as well. Then we'll see if we could get that up the in the algorithm.
If someone can find it, I would. I'd pay them to get me access to a film I worked on. It's absolutely impossible to find.
There you go.
Whereas I'm pretty sure the softcore comedy porn is buried somewhere on one of my hard drives.
Well, I think from both of those, then I think we would get to know you. But we might want to move on quickly.
I'm not in the movie, just to be clear.
Okay, no, I'm very cool on the IMDb. So yeah, if anyone can get Special Sauce, let Joey know.
Please.
And the final one, I don't know if this is going to be just obvious now based on your guests, or if you're going to throw a curveball, but if you're going to play an album or a band through the mill, what would it be?
I mean, we talked about Did we talk about albums not too long ago, Joey, on Gameplay Pod or Two Blokes?
I have no idea. We talk a lot.
We do. Because I think Slade was asking what's an album that we can listen to from start to finish without changing track.
Yeah.
And my brain immediately goes to Rumours by Fleetwood Mac. Now, I know Joey hates the album.
So overrated.
I really like that album.
Again, I've got to point out it's on my shelf behind me, Tim. I think you and I we're starting.
we're a bit like that sometimes.
Yeah.
But, it's just a phenomenal album, in my opinion. I don't think Fleetwood Mac really miss on that album at all. But I know Joey doesn't agree with me.
There's one good bass line on it, and that's it.
Well, what are you going to be playing, Joey?
Well, whatever it is, you're not going to listen with me. You're going to be eating risotto, stuffing your profiteroles with beans, and listen
I've chosen your guests. I've chosen you and your dessert. I've chosen your guests and your dessert, actually.
I'm not really salty about this. It's just for comedy value, Dan. Mine is obviously it's the Spark from Enter Shikari. It's the one with airfields on. I think it's wonderful. But I think if you were to do it with a guest, it would be one, awkward that the guy was there, and two, would be a bit depressing. So for albums, when I turned 30, Chris, who I think both of you may have spoken to, he's pretty prominent in our Discord, but not a podcaster. He got me an album, and it was Dad Rock, is what it was called. And I was like, I looked at it thinking, this is because I'm going to be a dad, and I'm 30, I'm old now, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, these are all songs that I really like. So it's a compilation called Dad Rock, and it's full of like pop punk and emo classics that I would play. That are all good fun.
Can I change my answer to now? That's what I call Music 99.
Isn't Dad Rock though probably stuff from like the year 2000? It's
very recent. 2000 to 2010. This album.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. No, I could listen to that. I could listen to that. The Slade thing, because I had him on another episode, which I'm going to get you both on for as well. I've got one that actually he kind of put forward called Mind Wipe, which is sort of fairly similar to Analyze People. His criteria is albums, for a good album, one that you wouldn't skip a tune. And I'm thinking, well, that's fine for me. But anyway, I'm getting off on a whole argument now. I don't think, do people listen to albums anymore? I don't know if they do.
It depends. Like if I'm discovering a band for the first time, then I'll find a track or two that I like and then be like, okay, what's this album like? So I discovered towards the end of last year the band Ghost. Joey, again, I know you're not a fan of them, but when I got introduced to them, I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to a few tracks, and I was like, okay, well now I need to listen to a few of their albums. I was like, this is really, really good.
I think people don't discover bands with albums anymore, but they discover albums from bands that they find in playlists and compilations and recommendations.
And TikTok.
So I've been, TikTok is a massive one for it. I've been listening to a band called Knock Loose recently. Just for context, Enter Shikari is very much on sort of the lighter side of the stuff that I listen to, even though it's my favourite. But I quite like hardcore, metalcore. Knock Loose are a genre called gent, which I don't really understand what it is, but apparently that's what they are. But their albums are really good. I only discovered them a couple of months ago, and I think I've listened to their albums through 4 or 5 times. So I think people do listen to albums, but they have to discover the artist elsewhere, whereas before you'd put on a music channel and find them that way, or someone would lend you an album and you'd listen to it back to back. So our consumption of music is very different to how it was.
You used to get an album and then wait for the inevitable 5 singles off of it.
Yeah.
Now it's you buy your 99p or whatever. I don't know. It shows how long it is since I've bought something on streaming. But your 99p single, and then you've got your constant mixtape.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what was the first album you guys ever bought?
You don't want to go there.
Oh no, I'm curious.
We do now.
Now I do.
The first one that I remember anyway was Jive Bunny. Now you guys are probably too young to know Jive Bunny, but it was one of these like novelty things, and it was basically like all. I think it was like it's kind of like the 50s and 60s tunes, but mixed into like a dancey, not like
really?
hardcore, but like
cool.
into a dance track. Yeah, if you I think it was Jive Bunny and the Mega Mix or something like that. But I was young, right? Granted, I was young.
No, that sounds really cool.
That sounds actually right on my street.
The first album I ever bought, I'm not going to say because the band are quite disgraced now, and I don't even want to taint your podcast.
I think I know where you go.
Yeah. For me, it was the first album I bought was Him and Love Said No, which is a pretty good album. But
it's the first concert you ever went to.
It was,
well,
with was it? What was the name of the support band? Kill Hannah. That was it. Good gig, but I went back to listen to Him a little while ago, like a couple of months back, and it does not hold up.
You see, that's the thing. And kind of like having an older sister at the time who was buying records probably before I was, so it was listening to and like the cassette tapes. So my childhood memories were like of listening to Duran Duran on cassette tape, having the original. There was a rival to Now That's What I Call Music. I think it was called Hits or something like that. And had the first one of that. It was double vinyl, having the Michael Jackson albums and the Wham. So I was listening to all those.
I used to work with someone called Rio, and I used to follow her around at work going, her name is Rio and she hates Duran Duran.
Oh, no, I love all that. Look, right, I think we've got under the skin of you two. I think we've found out a little bit more about you two. Thank you very much for coming on. I could talk to you all night.
Thanks for having us. And we will.
Yeah. I've got to get you on. I've got to get you on for the Mind Wipe. Are you two? Are one of you? Sorry, gonna plug your podcast, or if not, I will do it for you.
Tim can do it because I end up just saying go and listen to Casting Views and Just Football.
Well, if you look up Game Club Pod, you'll find the myriad of shows that we do. There's our mainline series of Game Club Pod, where once every 2 weeks we talk about video games, not too dissimilar from a book club. Dan's noted at the time of recording, our most recent episode is Hearthstone. But we cover a whole bunch of stuff. There is Slade's extra show, who's our third co-host, Between Two Pods, where he interviews other podcasters. There's the Anime Corner, where Slade and a few friends discuss an anime they've been watching each month, I think. To be honest, we have that much going on. It's a little hard to keep up with the schedule sometimes. We've got Two Blokes from Blighty, which is a weekly show every Wednesday, where Joey and I just get together and talk rubbish for an hour, some change, maybe give or take. And then there's Game Changers, which is a show that I very occasionally host. That one doesn't have a set schedule just because of the nature of it, but I try and interview industry professionals. So we've had people like Adam L. Hager on. We've had Andrew Bowen, who is the voice actor for Johnny Cage. It's good. We're still, I still actively reach out to people. It's just can't put a schedule on that one because it's a little bit tricky to pin them down. And
absolutely, look, if you're not subscribed to this feed, do it, because the variety of stuff you're putting out, and I'm going to say it again, I love you two guys, and throw Slade in as well, and it is a right combination of characters and voices. So yeah, definitely, there's something for you.
You're too kind.
Oh, yeah. Seriously, you're too kind.
Don't listen to it. It's waffle.
Look, again, just say thank you to the two of you. For me, is there anything you want to say, sorry, before you go?
Oh, we can't do our usual sign-off.
I thought you were saying, is there anything you want to say sorry for?
No, you've been very well behaved. Thank you. There's only a couple of beeps I think I've got to do,
but yeah. No, I don't think so. We won't sign off in our usual way.
There's a grown-up word in that one.
It won't be long before we get you back on, like I said. So for me, you're listening to me, so you know where to find me. But if you want to get hold of me, just look for Casting Views across all the social platforms. I am looking for people to be part of this series. So if you do fancy giving me your ideal dinner party menu and guests, drop me a note on social media or castingviewspod@gmail.com. I will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
1, 2, 3, 4. If I want your opinion, I will give it to you. Come on, check what we've got, 'cause we need it. Don't make us get a spark and bullshit.